Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody had a great Easter weekend. Today is April 21st, 2025. We're doing the Just for Today reading, and it is titled Fear. So, with that said, I'm going to get right into it. We have found that we had no choice except to completely change our old ways of thinking or go back to using. Many of us find our old ways of thinking were dominated by fear. We were afraid that we wouldn't be able to get our drugs or that there wouldn't be enough. We feared discovery, arrest, and incarceration. Further down the list were fears of financial problems, homelessness, overdose, and illness. And our fear controlled our actions. The early days of recovery weren't a great deal different for many of us. Then, too, fear dominated our thinking. What if staying clean hurts too much? We asked ourselves. What if I can't make it? What if the people in NA don't like me? What if NA doesn't work? The fear behind these thoughts can still control our behavior, keeping us from taking the risks necessary to stay clean and grow. It may seem easier to resign ourselves to certain failure, giving up before we start, than to risk everything on a slim hope. But that kind of thinking leads only to relapse. To stay clean, we must find the willingness to change our old ways of thinking. What has worked for other addicts can work for us, but we must be willing to try it. We must trade in our old cynical doubts for new affirmations of hope. When we do, we'll find it's worth the risk. Just for today, I pray for the willingness to change my old ways of thinking and for the ability to overcome my fears. All right, so with that said, that's one thing that stopped me from getting sober. I was always too afraid. I was afraid, I was gonna get, if I had to get clean, so I knew I was gonna be sick for multiple days, and I couldn't miss work. That was my excuse. I didn't want to miss work, and I didn't want to miss out on family time or whatever it was. I always had that excuse. And then finally I got to the point where I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to live that life anymore. And that's when I decided to put myself into treatment. It's a hard thing to overcome, but, you do get to that point where you want it more than you want the drugs. You want that sober life more than you want the drugs. I always said I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I'm sure a lot of people say that. And I said that for a long time before I even got clean. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, but was I really sick and tired? I knew I was sick, but, drugs just helped drown out the things in my life that I didn't want to deal with. And then finally I got to a point where I was ready to deal with those things, and I didn't want to deal with the drugs anymore. And I made that choice to get rid of the fear of being clean and do it. And I must say, since I've done it, I've had a huge change, and, you won't ever experience that change unless you pretty much grow a set of nuts and quit being scared of what life really has to offer. So, with today's reading, I hope if there's anybody out there, they can hear this message and just, quit being scared of living life. Drugs are doing nothing but holding you back. And once you decide to rid your life of drugs and that life, it's amazing what you can experience and the things that you're capable of. So with that said, I'm going to end today's reading, and I hope everybody has a great day.